Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube segment, I'm going to be talking about something that has finally happened in the sports world, and many of you, I'm sure, are very cognizant and aware of it, especially boxing aficionados, enthusiasts, that Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao have finally acquiesced and agreed and consummated a deal which will have them fight on May 2nd. Now, when we look at this, a lot of people think that this is going to be like the fight of the century. There's obviously a lot of hype built up for this boxing match. I don't know about the fight of the century, but it could very well be the fight of the decade. This is very, people have been waiting on bated breath for this. This thing has been protracted for some time. There was a lot of procrastination, perhaps too much. Many people would have rather seen these two combatants fight when they originally started talking about this back in 2009, because they would have been more closer to the prime of their careers as opposed to now when they're basically in the twilight, both of them. Floyd Mayweather recently turned 38. Manny Pacquiao is 36. But at the same time, that being said, this could still be a very competitive battle between these two. And we can go back to a fight. Many of you out there may not have been alive when this happened, but many of you, even if you weren't alive, you may have heard about this, that there was a classic legendary bout took place between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in 1975. And in that bout, those fighters were pretty much approaching the twilight of their careers. Now, and that turned out to be a classic fight. And sometimes when you have an adversary or opponent in boxing, even if you're in that second part of your career, well, a lot of times it brings out, I think, the best in the fighters. So you might see these fighters fighting as if they were in their prime, because they're going to have all that impetus and motivation behind it. So that's what's going to make this fight, I think, very interesting and intriguing. Now, what I think may have happened was, now this could be, this is speculation on my part, I just kind of wonder if maybe this was protracted for such a long period of time, maybe somewhat attributed to getting more money, having more money generated. This is going to completely surpass, more likely than not, as far as pay-per-view, money for an event, revenue generated for the fight in general. This fight, in my opinion, really is pitting unequivocally the two best fighters pound for pound right now. And when I look at this, I'm kind of wondering, was all this procrastination, was it a subterfuge to some degree, just to build the hype up, just to get more notoriety, more attention drawn to it, in an attempt to get more money? Something tells me Pacquiao and Mayweather really are not afraid of each other and never were. Maybe that's what at least one of them wanted others to think, and the real reason was something more or less connected with something of a monetary nature, and that's why they prolonged this deal for such a long time. When I look at this matchup really is going to be a phenomenal one. I see this fight going the distance. I see it going the full 12 rounds. Now, Floyd Mayweather has only knocked out 2 opponents in the last 12 fights he's had. Manny Pacquiao hasn't been able to knock out an opponent since 2009. So when I look at this, I see this going really the distance. You see such a great contrast in styles between the fighters. You have Mayweather, who is an excellent strategist, a tactician, very scientific, will be very methodical. He is, as far as his punching accuracy, that's at 42% as far as punches landed, and that's the best. in professional boxing. Manny Pacquiao, I believe, is 35%. Floyd Mayweather's defense is stellar. When I look at this fight, I believe it will, like I said before, it will go 12 rounds. I see Mayweather emerging victorious, keeping his unblemished record intact. Floyd Mayweather, I think, wins it 7 rounds to 5 by a score of 115 to 113 over Pacquiao. I know it's a little early to be making predictions, but I can't help it. I'm just so enthusiastic about this fight. Now, yes, the price is a little exorbitant to see it. It's going to be close to $90. It's expected as far as a pay-per-view purchase goes. I would obviously recommend, if somebody wants to see it, to maybe get a friend or two and not have to dole out quite as much money, because if you have another person paying with you, that would be like $45 each. 3 people, it's like $30 each. So, or if you're a person that likes to go out to bars perhaps, or restaurants, they may have, some of them are I'm sure going to have the fight on their television there, and you just have to pay whatever it is to get something to eat or what have you. So that's another thing I would perhaps recommend if you're the type that goes out to those places. Now, I'm not one that does, so I'm probably going to see if I can get a friend to watch this fight with, and at least one person, so I don't have to be too extravagant in this case. And really, this fight is really, it's going to give what boxing fans have really, I think, been deprived of for so long and really deserve. The one positive thing about all this procrastination that led up to this event finally is that it's going to make the experience maybe that much better. And yes, I wish maybe they could have fought earlier, maybe in 2009, because their skills obviously have, I'm sure, have deteriorated for both of them to some degree. But I'm sure when this fight comes around that these fighters will both be ready. They're both going to be very focused and disciplined. You have Pacquiao being that relentless puncher against a more methodical Mayweather, who wants to make his punches count. And this really, I think, you have, now you don't really maybe sense any animosity between the two fighters, and there may not be, but when they get in the ring, these people obviously are going to look at each other as the enemy, and they will, I think they'll give it the best shot, obviously, because not just for their sake, but because it's what boxing fans have wanted and yearned for such a long time. It's felt like an eternity to many people. Now, I'm not a super big boxing fanatic or fan, but this will really, this is something that I'm really anticipating, and I'm willing to try to see, to do whatever it takes to watch this bout on May 2nd. And it's something really, really strongly to look forward to. Now, when I look at this fight, what makes it really, this matchup really compelling, is the fact that Floyd Mayweather's legacy is obviously at stake. He has a perfect record right now. If he loses this fight and he gets one loss, that will tarnish it and taint it to some degree. And don't get me wrong, regardless of whether Floyd wins this fight or not, I think he's a shoo-in for the Boxing Hall of Fame. He's obviously very proficient at what he does. And the thing about this is, this could go down as one of the greatest fights that we've ever been witness to. Now, this fight is just something really, it's for the ages, and for me, I mean, at my age, months go by very quickly, but this fight won't be for over 2 more months from now, and it is going to seem like an eternity, because I'm really anxious and getting very antsy and impatient regarding the fight actually taking place, and I'm really looking forward to this. And Obviously, I think if whoever loses, it won't be because of complacency or one fighter becoming arrogant or cocky. It's going to be because that somebody has to be the superior fighter on this day. And I do believe, as I stated before, it will be Floyd Mayweather. But I wouldn't be completely bewildered or be in a state of shock if Pacquiao pulls this off. Now, when I looked online yesterday, Mayweather was favored. It was like they had a number they were using, 285, which for whatever that number was, it meant that he was a fairly big favorite. But something tells me that that number is going to dissipate and go down and diminish before that the fight actually occurs. I think you're going to see a lot more people going with Pacquiao. And I went on to I believe it was BleacherReport.com. I thought it was interesting that I don't know how many people actually vote on that site, because I don't think it's as popular as, say, ESPN, of course. But they had, like, I don't remember the exact percentage. It was near 64, I think, in favor of Pacquiao as far as the fans voting for him. So, and I see this fight obviously be very competitive. You have these two formidable opponents, and I think they're going to give boxing everything they hope for. There's some cynics out there that are wondering, well, what if this ends in 1 round or 2 rounds, and I go to pay-per-view and I spend this money for nothing? Well, when you're getting something on pay-per-view, it's a calculated risk, of course, every time, because yes, in theory that could happen, but I think the percentages say it will go at least a pretty good distance. It will go at the very minimum 8 rounds, I believe. So I think this has a great it's just so compelling. You're going to have, when this fight, whoever wins will probably go down in this era in the contemporary boxing as the greatest fighter in that period, pound for pound. So this is what it comes down to. Can you imagine if it ended in a draw? What would happen? Imagine what would happen for the next fight. You could very well have those sales as far as attending the fight, pay-per-view revenue generated, just the overall revenue generated for the fight will be so prodigious. I'm sure it could very well surpass this one. I don't think it's going to end in a draw. I think we're going to have a winner. And if it ends in a draw, somehow I don't think you're going to wait 5 or 6 years to watch the second one, considering what their ages would be, especially at that time. You would have Mayweather. I mean, if it was, say it was 6 years, you'd have Mayweather 44 and Pacquiao at 42. So I think you would get the rematch within a year, more likely than not. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube segment for Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao finally acquiescing to a deal and consummating a deal, which is going to give boxing fans what they've wanted for some time, but what they've been clamoring for. And anyway, people, Edwin Learnard saying, until next time, stay well.